I just want to thank you to listen to me today. And I just want to give you some precision about this presentation. I will give you some information about our case study for our exams in 7 to let you know what is happening now with remote proctoring and how we are dealing with that and what are our findings and what is our strategy. So for that, what I have done is to make a study with risk and opportunities and to give you some output about what we have done. So before the pandemic, the context was this one. We were speaking a lot about the Bologna process and Erasmus. Our keyword was mobility. We were speaking a lot of mobility, and we were very happy with that, and the things were working well. We were seeing a huge increase of learners with this mobility. If you check what was happening with traveling with the passengers, with the air traffic passengers, we can see that we have seen a huge increase of the number of passengers during the last 10 years, more or less. I think that it's very important to bear these things in mind because probably it's explaining what is happening now. The level of people traveling during at the beginning of 2000 was very low if you compare it with the situation in 2019. If you're speaking about our exams, what was happening, it was a regular increase of the number of our candidates. I think that it was the case of many languages with learners, with students. It was the path that we were following. We get more and more people studying like international students, and we start to use our exam for migrants, for migration purposes, learners, and you can see this kind of increase. What was happening with computerized exam, it was really an increase of the number of candidates. You have the red curve to see that. And you can see that it's a steeper curve, in fact, and we get more and more candidates on computer, but the number of candidates taking paper and pencil exams were increasing too. So this was the situation before the crisis. Just before the crisis, what we start to do, it was to work on innovation, and as Nick tell you, on artificial intelligence, in our case for automated rating. And actually, I think that what was very important, it was the idea of automation. Artificial intelligence is just one part of automation, but what we were doing, it was to work more and more with automation because we are dealing with a high number of people, and really it was needed. So our interest with technology has not been, was not born after the crisis, but before. I think that it's very important to understand that because not everything starts with the COVID. It was in the air. It was really what we were starting to do. So what we were doing, mainly it was watching. We didn't identify immediate risk during this watching with remote proctoring. It was one option for us. And we start to think about what can we do with remote proctoring, and what we have found, it was the cost was higher than the benefits. So it was not needed. Nobody claims strongly that we need to go with remote proctoring, and the people seems to be happy with this situation. So it was not really something difficult. But one of the risks that we have identified before the crisis, it was the fact that remote proctoring can be a very huge shift with what we were doing, because the notion of test center can change. So if you're using remote proctoring, what you are calling a test centers is changing a lot. So in our case, it was an issue, because it's not fitting with our way to deal with our test centers, and our test centers have a huge paper to promote our exams and our language. So to go with individual at-home proctoring, it could be a threat to manage test center and to follow our steps with our policy. The opportunity it was to reach candidates isolated, living far away from a test center. It's something very important, because, for example, you have some countries, they don't have test center because you don't have so many people who want to take a French exam. So to give the opportunity to the people to take their exams at home, it's an opportunity to bring them in your community of candidates. It can improve the innovative dimension of our exams, because obviously it is a way to deal with digital exams and not on paper, with paper and pencil exams. So probably it's one of the things that we can do to improve the innovation. Okay, during the crisis, we start to react. The key word probably is this one. We have been asked to react quickly because people were not aware about the situation. They start to think that it was a real threat on everything. So mainly we have been asked to deal with a quick analysis and to start our steps with a solution. The context during the crisis, and we are still in this crisis, but during the last year, what we have seen, it has been a huge decrease of the number of people traveling, definitely. And for example, for traffic passenger, for air traffic passenger, the decrease has been very high. But if you analyze the situation, you can see that the numbers during the last year, they are just the level of people traveling during at the beginning of the millennium. It means that we are coming back 20 years ago, but we are not coming back to a very low number of people traveling. I think that this is very important to take in account this reality, because many people are not aware that we are coming back no more than 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was not aware that we were not traveling a lot. And now you have a lot of people claiming that the situation is very bad. Nothing is working. It's not like that. because you have still some kind of mobility. It's just impossible to get people not to travel. It's not what is happening. And you can see that when you're checking the reality, you can see that you have still huge issues with airports and the transportation of people. And you need people to travel, to study in other countries. And definitely it's what is happening now. What is happening, and it's not something new, it's something that is coming back from years ago. We can see that the evolution of mobile data consumption is on the same way than it was 5 years ago. You have a regular increase of data consumption, and it's not changing a lot. It's just following the same path than before. When you see the consumption of energy, the demand of energy, you can see that we have coming back to the same situation than 1 year ago. So it has been very difficult at the beginning of the last year, but now we are mainly in the same things than 1 year ago. When you check what kind of devices the people are using, and it can be very interesting for us to understand what we have to do with our exams, what we see is that the number of people using their mobile phones is still, you have still an increase of people using their phone. For laptops, you see that the proportion is every year it's less than the previous year. It's because you have more and more mobile phone, but when you check the number, you can understand that we are still using laptops, but obviously not everyone is using a laptop. So it's not, there is no devices universal. So it's probably what is important for us to understand that this situation is very complicated because you have to deal with people who have a mobile phone and a laptop, and you can be sure that laptop is not everywhere, but you have still a lot of people working with laptops. If we are checking the number of candidates for our tests, the TCF, it's the test de connaissance du français. It's the same family of linear tests than IELTS, TestDAF, TOEFL. And what we are saying is that the number of candidates decrease, and we can fully understand why. Mostly it's because of the students, the international students in France. But the decrease is not that high. And for me, it's very interesting to see that, because it means that really people need to be tested and they need to study abroad. The things are not changing that much. So what is happening is not a situation where you have your exams on paper and pencil, and this situation is very bad for you and nobody is taking an exam because you're only dealing with paper and pencil. It's not what is happening. I can show you the next slide. What you can see is that the number of candidates using their computer to be tested for the TCF is still increasing. But for the first time, what is happening, we can see that the number of candidates using the paper and pencil is it's decreasing. And for me, it's something interesting, because probably what is happening is that people don't have the opportunity to be tested because there is no opportunity to get a computer to be tested. So we have to be aware that putting more computer probably is not the best solution for many candidates. One of the issues is that they need to be tested in a test center with paper and pencil because they don't have really a choice to do that, or they make the choice to go in the test center to be tested with paper and pencil. What are the actions that we have taken during the crisis? It was to improve the service offered to the candidate on the center, in the sense that you can take more time to send your material. You're not really respecting everything as we are doing in a normal situation. We have to adapt our level of quality, and to understand that in that context, what is key is time. You have to give more time to everybody to be sure that you can test your candidates and you're not in this bad situation where you're not waiting to get your data for your raters and to give your results. What we have done is to be thinking a lot about the security guarantees against fraud, the security of test paper, and the data personal protection. What we have done is to preserve the cooperation activity of French diplomatic posts. It's something very important for us. We have to work with our cultural network because they are the one promoting our language, and they are the one who are in contact with the international students and our universities. So if we don't want to break everything, we have to work with the people we are working with for 20 years. What we have done is to deal with the emergency situation as the first step, to take into account the curfew, the new situation. And what we have done is to check the geographical location affected by this emergency, and to have special policies for these areas. And we start to be thinking about a limited period of time to deal with that. So what is the idea with remote proctoring for us? Is to use it when we don't have no option, when the situation is very bad, where we don't have better option than to use remote proctoring, and not to use it for more than let's say 2 months, 3 months, the times to get to a better situation. What is the risk of this policy? It's not to refit enough our policy. If we don't want to use massively the remote proctoring, properly it could be not enough. So it's a risk. We don't want to face a situation where the individual are more important than our collective action. And probably it's a risk for us because we are not fitting only to individual, to our candidates, but we are fitting at our general policy on French language and French studies. What can happen if we are not dealing seriously with remote proctoring is that we can lose the trustfulness of our ministries, because we can be in a situation where the people are not able to take their exams. As I told you, we have a good number of candidates taking our exams. So actually, it's not what is happening, but we are checking that to be sure that there is no issue with the fact that the candidate can take the exam. Another risk is to open the door that our exams are not at the right level of quality. We can face people against our exams. If we are going with remote proctoring, you have a lot of people in universities, in institutions, are not really happy with remote proctoring, and you can read a lot of things in the newspaper. Obviously, just opinion. It's not factual. But if you are not taking that seriously, you can lose the trust of the people. So, what is the opportunity of this strategy? Is to rebuild slowly. We don't want to change everything too quickly, because a quick change can block everything that we have done during the last 20 years, or maybe more than 20 years. So we want to go with the people to change slowly what we are doing, and to be sure that we get happy people with what we are doing. And we don't want people to see remote proctoring as a threat on their activities. For employees, for example, because if you don't have no more test center, probably you have to fire people in the test center. So it's something very serious, and you have to take that very seriously when you're dealing with more than 800 test centers. It's a lot of people working on that. So you have to do the things with the people working with you to avoid bad feelings about what is happening. We think that the feedback that we are getting from people can help us to find the solution that we are looking at. We don't have the same people in different countries. You have people who want today a good option for remote proctoring, and you have other people, they are reluctant to get remote proctoring. So you have to deal with that. You have people pro, against, and if you are not taking that in account, it could be a real threat for you. What we are doing is to have some kind of consultancy, because for us it's very important to get this kind of dialogue with our stakeholders. So we are in touch with our secretaries, and what we have found during this work is that our ministries, they don't have the same feeling in France, in Canada. The Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Interior, they don't have the same feeling about remote proctoring. You have people against, people who are in favor of remote proctoring, and you can easily understand it's because they are not facing the same situation. When you're speaking about migration, citizenship procedure, you have to be really, you have to be aware that cheating is something very important. Personal data is something key. So you have to be sure that what you're doing, it's something that it's really it's something that you can manage. Okay. The opportunity here, again, it's to get people on board and to to take our time to design our option, the way to deal with remote proctoring, to go further and not to use it, and let's say in few months to get to the conclusion that it was bad. It was bad to do that, and we did that because of the COVID. We think that it's not the good way to deal with that. We don't have to do that only because of the COVID. It's because it's probably a new option that we have to consider, and we have to understand how to use it. We have done some kind of sourcing during the crisis, and for us it has been very interesting to understand that one of the risks of the sourcing is that you don't have so much time to deal with that. So sourcing during the crisis, it's something difficult because you need time to analyze what you can get from a private company, for example. And if the offer fits what you need, it's a long process. It's not something quick. And if it's not a long process, you're at risk to use a platform, a technological device that is not fitting what you need. I'm speaking about security, the data management, and not all the offer are enough good for us. For example, something very simple. You have your data in servers in United States. It's not what we are supposed to do. We have to get the data in France, in the French territory, to be able to manage the security of the data. And we are not able to put that in another country. So for some tests from some providers, it's something just impossible to deal for that, for them. So the opportunity during the sources is that we learn to identify a doable solution. We get feedback from commercial companies, and we help them to improve their solution, because their solution are not the same for a university and for tests like us, because our tests, they are taken by individuals, and these individuals, they are not always linked to an institution. When you're taking an exam in a university, all the students have to take the same exam. In our case, it's individual. It's someone registered for an exam is going to the test center. So it's easily for us to manage this situation. And we don't have, until now, we don't see bad feedback about from the candidates. So after the crisis, what will we do? We have to consider the use of language. Obviously, the situation now is changing. What people are doing online is not exactly what people were doing in their physical life. So this context is something new, and we have to understand where we are with our languages. I mean, with the platform, the devices, the application that you are using, the offer is not exactly the same, and it's changing a lot. The long-term strategy is to use the technology to make our exams more relevant, to enhance its validity, reliability, attractiveness. We want to reinforce the French-speaking community and regalism. We want to give better professional university to thousands of people working with us. Basically, our long-term strategy is fitting what we were doing until now. But one of the risks that we identified is that the exam is becoming more and more a product and not a collective ritual. Until now, you were in the same room with different people taking the same exam. Now you could be taking an exam at home. You're isolated and you're losing this symbolic ritual action. And we have to take that very seriously because it's changing a lot what you're doing. We are focusing a lot on tools and not on the aim of our policy. And for us, it could be something very frightening because as French, we have an idea about our policy. And we think that the French community is something important for us, and we want to improve this community. So it's not the idea about a product, it's the idea about a community. We have the risk is to accept the ideological orientation of technologies as our policy. It's what is happening when you're going with a test provider. They are coming with a product, and you're coming with your policy. And you have to find a way to fit the two different approach, again, to follow with what we are doing, because we don't have we don't have why to change our policy just because we are using a new tool. So we have to take seriously the emergence of a new economical model based on data valuation. For us, it's something very interesting. We don't have the answer, but what is happening is that we know that in the future, the use of the data will not be only for people taking an exam. So again, when you are dealing with private companies, you have to be aware that for them to get the data of your candidates, to get the way they are using their computer, for example, the way they are using the keyboard, it's something that they can evaluate. And they are getting more resources, more financial resources with what your candidates are doing. And it's something very new for us. And it's a risk because it's not at all what we are doing with our exams. The opportunity is to improve the technological skills in our worldwide network. I think that probably it's needed for us. And it could be a very positive outcome. We have to improve the way we are dealing with technology to be sure that we are still under control and we are going where we want to go. It's mainly what Nick was saying. If you are speaking about plurilingualism, probably technology is a good way to go in that direction. But you have to be aware that you have to follow this direction, and the technology is not the point. The technology is just the opportunity to go further with your ideas. Okay, thank you very much.